Hey everybody, welcome into the back room. I'm Andy Ostroy. We have former CIA and FBI agent Tracy Walder with us today. We'll chat with Tracy in just a second, but first, thanks for tuning in. We appreciate you listening, and we'd love to hear your comments. So email us at backroomandy@gmail.com and or post on our social media, and we'll read some feedback next time. And if you like the podcast, please rate and review and follow or subscribe, and you'll be notified every time we post a new episode. So let me tell you a little bit about Tracy Walder. 2 weeks after graduating from USC, Tracy began her career as a staff operations officer in the Central Intelligence Agency's Counterterrorism Center before, during, and after September 11th, 2001, and as a special agent at the FBI. During her time at the CIA, she lived in and traveled to countries in the Middle East, Africa, and Europe, as well as served in war zones such as Afghanistan. After the CIA, Tracy became a special agent at the FBI's Los Angeles field office, Santa Ana Resident Agency. Following her time at the CIA and FBI, she received her master's in teaching at Chapman University and began teaching history, and a course created for young women on national security and global policy at high schools in California and Texas. She now works as an adjunct instructor of criminal justice at Texas Christian University, is the national security contributor for News Nation, and appeared on the Discovery Channel's Lost Monster Files, the History Channel, and the Discovery Channel. She is currently the star of the #1 documentary on Netflix, American Manhunt, Osama Bin Laden. Tracy, welcome into the back room.
Thank you so much for having me.
So let's get right into it. You wrote the 2020 book, The Unexpected Spy, From the CIA to the FBI, My Secret Life, Taking Down Some of the World's Most Notorious Terrorists. This is about your journey from sorority house to the CIA. Tell us about that incredible story.
Gosh, it's hard to imagine. It came out, yes, about 5 years ago now. I didn't grow up my whole life wanting to work at the CIA. I don't think that I even knew that it was a job for me, to be completely honest. I'm a Gen Xer, I guess. And so we didn't grow up with pop culture that kids these days, have the shows like Criminal Minds, Homeland, Lioness, you name it, all these awesome shows, which are great because it exposes kids to these careers. But I didn't have any of that. And so for me, I didn't even know that this was an attainable job. But also at the same time, just like geopolitically, the world was really focused on Russia because, as I say, Russia's always going to Russia, right? And so that sort of, it wasn't an area of interest necessarily for me. The Middle East became an area of interest for me when I was in college. I was working out, and I was watching, I think it was CNN at the time, and these two gentlemen, Peter Bergen, who I've since become, friendly with, were interviewing this guy, and his name was Osama Bin Laden. And that was, so I grew up in the days of the first World Trade Center attack. Waco, Ruby Ridge, Oklahoma City, right? That was what I guess shaped my version of terrorism. And so I didn't even know what Al-Qaeda was at that time. I mean, they're new. They were from 1989. They were just babies at that point. And so when he issued his declaration of war against the U.S. during that interview, I think I just became curious. Who is this guy? How can I find out more? And I went to a great college. I went for free. My dad was a professor there.
What were you majoring in at the time?
I was majoring in history. I really wanted to be a high school history teacher. I had a very influential teacher who was bullied horrifically, and he kind of helped me, I guess, overcome that, gain confidence, and really love American history. And so I just wanted to be just like Mr. Hanley. That's what I was going to do. That was my major. And I started because I wanted my dad's free tuition. I'm like, what can I do to learn about this terrorism thing, but still graduate in 4 years with my history degree? And so I started taking like modern Middle Eastern history, introduction to Islam, whatever I could. But again, I didn't know that there was like a job I could do that with. I'm not stupid.
Yeah, they kind of keep that quiet, don't they?
Yeah.
Those jobs.
Well, they keep it quiet. But again, I always like to orient people to the time. Right? Like we can only do what we know. And so this is a pre-9/11 world, which looked super different, than a post-9/11 world. And so one day, my sorority sister was going to the career fair. This is how old I am. This is the .com boom, right? So everyone wanted a job in that. I did not. But I was riding my bike and we passed a table that said CIA and that they were looking for liberal arts majors, which I was. And so I
So they
went to
actually had a CIA table.
that's super common. Like now
Oh, really? Okay.
I teach criminal justice at Texas Christian University here in Fort Worth area, and they come and recruit there too. That's actually super normal.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think it's a little known thing. People assume it's some secretive way. It's
Right.
really not.
I guess it only
And
becomes secret when you get the job.
yes. Well, depending on what job
Sort
you
of.
have, yes.
Right.
Yes. And so I gave him my resume, and the rest is history.
Wow. And so at that time, you were a history major, but you had no thoughts whatsoever about going into government or in particular intelligence, counterterrorism, national security. Like that was so far from what was in your head at that time.
I think I didn't even know that it was a job you could have.
Right.
Outside of James Bond, who I think was still Sean Connery at that time, right? So,
Is there another Bond?
I mean,
Really? Come
obviously
on.
not, no. But outside of that, I didn't even know that it was something I could do. Again, I know it sounds like I'm like not a smart person when I say that. I really am, but I just want people to understand that
Sure.
time, it just wasn't as in your face as I think it is today.
And what was the time frame between when you were at that table to getting a call, going in for the interviews, and actually going to work?
Sure. So I went to the table. I don't remember the exact month. It was February or March of my junior year of college because students were looking for internships to get jobs, ultimately, all those things. And that was when I dropped off my resume. And he called 2-ish weeks later. I received a phone call, and then I started the process. And I remember this because it was spring break. And so in April of my junior year of college, so that would have been 99, April of 99. And then, there's the hoops you jump through, right? Each process you
Sure,
clear
like
or
any
don't
job.
clear. Yeah, or you don't clear. And so that from beginning to end, by the time I was done doing the big one, like the polygraph, all of that, I was done in August of 99. And then I started my senior year. And by November of 99, I had a conditional offer of employment that was contingent upon my graduation, from college.
And what were you brought in to do? What was the job offer?
Yeah. So when you get the job offer, right, when you open it up, all it just says is that it's a job offer from the Central Intelligence Agency. It doesn't tell you where you're going and what you're doing. And
We want you to be a spy in the Middle East.
Yeah, it doesn't work like that. They're certainly not going to send that in the mail to you, obviously.
Good point.
And I think things have changed. Maybe people do have more headway. Again, I think for someone like myself, you have to remember I had a very broad liberal arts degree, right? And so I had an idea of where I wouldn't be going. I knew I wasn't going to work in what's called the DI or be an analyst. And that's because I was very unqualified to do that. Most of them have masters, PhDs in South Korean politics, right? Super specific subject areas. And I didn't have that. I wasn't going to do technology. No one wants me doing math or science or anything related to that. I had a feeling I might end up in we call it the dark side, or the DO, which is the Directorate of Operations. We are the ones that work with human assets for the most part, just in different capacities. And that is where I ended up. You really don't find out until you EOD or enter on duty, your first day. So that would have been June-ish of 2000. And then from there, I was excited because I went to the Counterterrorism Center, which is where I really wanted to go, but it wasn't where the cool kids were. At the time, it was small. It was a lot of kind of younger folks because, again, the action was mostly in Russia, but then also Latin America. There was a lot going on in terms of counter narcotics and all of that at the time. And so I remember people thinking I was crazy because they're like, why do you want to work here? It's not cool. Right. And I was so excited because I was exactly where I wanted to be. And I just got, I guess, lucky.
So you kind of intuitively knew what you wanted, even though in a way you may not have been so acutely aware of what you wanted.
Yeah, I guess you're right. I mean, I wanted to do the counterterrorism Middle East stuff. But I knew I wasn't going to be that person who would just turn down the job because I didn't get that. I thought, okay, I'll be put wherever they put me. Suck it up, be happy, learn. And then I can always move around, once I get there.
You write about rampant sexism that exists. Was that something you experienced like right away, or did that just
So
sort of unravel over time?
I wrote about it in FBI. That was where I experienced the rampant sexism. At CIA, I actually really didn't have much of a problem. And a lot of it was because I had pretty excellent group and division chiefs who were actually male, but were fantastic. The FBI was a whole different ball game, and it was actually very shocking. I don't know if you realize I'm the only woman who's been both a CIA officer. I left the CIA and then I became an FBI special agent.
So how long were you at CIA before you went to FBI?
I think 5, 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went to the FBI just because I did not want to work overseas anymore. I was really tired. I'm sure you can imagine being in the Counterterrorism Center before, during, and then after September 11th was a lot, obviously. I didn't leave because I hated it. I mean, I'm still friends with my bosses, bridesmaids at my wedding, all the things. I just didn't want to be overseas. And I thought, okay, well, I can be an FBI agent and be here in the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was actually why I left. But the FBI and the sexism there was pretty bad.
Mm. And is it still like that, do you think?
Yes. So it's why actually, it's really weird. There's a bit, and I've talked to people about this before and they agree. There's like, strangely, when something like that happens to you, there's like a shame that goes along with it and a little bit of embarrassment. And so in my book, I was actually never going to put in that I was an FBI agent until my husband, who's awesome, was like, dude, that's like a big deal that you've done both.
Right.
Like no one's done that. Why would you do that? And so that got me thinking. And then I think it was 2019 or so, I got an email from someone and it was a link to a New York Times article. And so I looked through the article and it was a 19-woman sexual harassment and gender discrimination suits against the FBI. And they were not as fortunate as I graduated Quantico. I became a special agent. I worked out in the field. And these women were all dismissed, mostly because of their gender. And so that's why they had sued. And it was at that moment that I'm like, I'm putting this in the book. I'm definitely putting this in the book. We need to. I did not join their lawsuit, obviously. I don't qualify for it, but I thought this was my way to help them get their story out there. And so this September, actually, in 2024, the largest gender discrimination lawsuit of any federal entity was just settled with them. So I don't know that things have changed, Andy. I wish they had.
I can't imagine with this administration it has gotten any better and not gotten 1,000 times worse. But
I think it's become a lot worse because of the perception that they want. So I think it had started to get a little bit better, to be honest with you. The FBI, back in the day, right? I think it was established as like the door kicker downers, right? The big rough dudes that come in, bust down doors. But after September 11th, the FBI's mission sort of changed, right? And they had to start collecting more intelligence, dealing more with human assets. And it changed, right? The perception of what a special agent is changed. That's good. We need all of that. We need the holistic approach. We need people to kick down doors, but we also need people to handle assets. I think this administration's focus, and I mean, anyone could correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I know, is very much on transitioning back to the door kicking down, right? And so that is not going to be an environment where gender equality is going to thrive.
And when you throw in the personal experiences of the people in charge, that's not helping either, I would imagine.
No.
You are prominently featured in the new Netflix docuseries American Manhunt, Osama Bin Laden. It took the United States almost 15 years to successfully hunt down and kill Bin Laden. Describe your role in this operation.
Yeah, so I started my very first job at the agency was terrorist training camps in Afghanistan. Who's coming, who's going, where can we get information, from who's coming and going in these, what can we do about it? Can we target any of these people? And basically what had happened, and I don't think they actually talk about this in the documentary, so yeah, I can talk about it here, was prior to me joining the agency. And so this would have been under the Clinton administration because I was there, right at that like change. What had happened is they were running drone flights over Afghanistan just as intelligence collecting missions. But during one of those, and you can actually see it on YouTube now, they saw Bin Laden on the drone. And it was at that point that President Clinton, he couldn't get fighter jets there quick enough to do anything about it. Not his fault. They were just in Somalia. It's too far away. And so that was when he realized, like, maybe we need to arm these drones. Maybe we need to put a payload on them that will do something more immediate. And so that's when that like started, if you will. And then Bush obviously continued it clearly. But I was brought into that program a week before September 11th. No, I didn't know September 11th was going to happen. But interestingly, we saw all the camps clear out, which I guess probably now in hindsight is an indicator. And so I wasn't supposed to begin working that until I think they had said it was like the late spring of 2001, I think was when they were going to, not the late spring, that would have been late spring, of 2002. But obviously September 11th happened. And so they had to speed up the usage of that program. And so that's what we did. I started doing that right away. But I was on duty the night, and I talk about this in the documentary, and I've gotten some hate mail about it, which is really weird.
Really? What from what?
It's your fault. My personal favorite, Andy, is because they had a woman doing this, it's your fault that we lost Bin Laden.
Oh, of course.
It's really my favorite. I actually printed it out because I was like 100%.
And it's probably from dudes who literally ask their wives 5,000 times a day where my keys are, where all my shit is, because they can't fucking find anything. But now they're criticizing you for not finding Bin Laden. Perfect.
Those are my favorite.
So on brand.
Those are my favorite, and I do print them out because you've got to have a sense of humor, right, about these things. And so it was not my fault. We basically what had happened.
Wait, we're breaking news here. It is not Tracy's fault.
No, it was not. If you want to blame anyone, I guess we can blame the Bush administration for not sending in troops. But
that works for me.
So basically what had happened look, we didn't have an exact location on him, but we knew the vicinity of where he was in Tora Bora. But the problem is, and we're seeing this right now with Iran, things are underground or in caves. You can't just shoot it down with a Hellfire drone missile. It's not going to do anything. And so we knew we needed aerial support, obviously. But the problem is when you bomb something, people that are alive run away, because I know that might shock people. You want to live. And so one of the things we said was, hey, if we do these aerial strikes, Bush, you are going to need ground troops to like pick up those who are running away, because they will run away and they'll get into Pakistan. Well, we bombed. Bin Laden escaped. He wouldn't put in troops. And so he escaped to Pakistan. And we all know eventually he was found in Abbottabad in Pakistan. So,
I mean, the documentary is so good. I'm not going to give anything away, but just because obviously we know how things ended.
Right.
But what makes it so gripping is the way the story unfolds. And it's almost like the real-time aspect to how the film walks us through the final moments. It's so well done. But 15 years seems like a really long time for a manhunt. Why did it take so long to locate and finally kill him?
So I just want to be clear. I have not watched it. And part of it is that I have a lot of PTSD associated with September 11th and serving in Afghanistan and all of the things I've seen. And so I have not watched it, but I have heard that same kind of feedback that you're giving. Listen, I think the reason that it took 15 years is because, and I think this might surprise some listeners, I think it got to a point with Bin Laden that we realized that he was not super effective anymore in leading Al-Qaeda, because he knew he had a bounty on his head, right? He knew people were looking for him, and he was delegating those responsibilities to others. So like Zarqawi, who was my target, is there, and other individuals who became, I don't want to say more important because they're all important, but became more of a pressing issue because they were actually launching attacks. And so it's not because people stopped looking for him. It's just that other individuals started to also become important. Also, you have to remember, it's in a way looking for a needle in a haystack. Also, these individuals don't pick up the phone and talk to each other,
Right.
right? Like, I think it was Zero Dark 30 who did the best job of portraying this, where they're saying, "Hey, it's Muhammad. This is my location." Like, no one's doing that. We don't even do that in an intel world. Like, that's tradecraft
Except if
101.
you're Pete Hegseth
True,
on
except if
Signal.
your headset on Signal chats. Then that's fine,
Yeah, then you
right?
give everything away.
Not a problem. But, you're not supposed to do that, right? Terrorists know not to do that as well. They're not stupid. And so part of his issue was that he was communicating through, and you'll know that it was through couriers, right? That's how he was communicating. And so you realize your target becomes less about Bin Laden and more about the people who might be around him serving him.
Right.
That's who becomes, and those people constantly change all the time because that's what we call OPSEC or operational security. Again, Trump was not a stupid person. And so he was constantly changing them out. And we would get we'd capture one and get that information, but then it would become old.
Right.
2 weeks later because he had someone else. And so that's why it took so long. It's not that people were incapable or didn't care. It's just that was why. Also, we had another war in between there.
Yeah. And like you said before, I mean, he's hiding in a hole in the mountains of Pakistan. Like, it's not, it's not like he's on 78th and Columbus and, you could just go.
That would be very convenient.
It would have been for us, probably for him too. There's a lot of cool stuff up there to eat and shop. But, I think on some level we all have a level of PTSD from that. I mean, I live just blocks from Ground Zero. I watched the plane hit the building from my window, and that orange fireball seemed like it was coming into my apartment. That's how close I live. So we all have a level of that. But I do advise people to watch the documentary because it's not only a fantastic explanation of things, but it really does justice to people like you and those who not only were part of the manhunt and the investigation, but just the everyday counterterrorism business. It's so important what people like you did then, what people are doing today. But at the same time, and then when you circle back to a Hegseth or a Tulsi Gabbard or whoever, when I was watching that documentary, and I said to myself, wow, the amount of brain power and patriotism and dedication, the smart, qualified people that were part of this operation, that were leading this operation. And then I immediately thought, what if that happened today? Who are the people in the room today? And we're seeing it, right? We're seeing it play out. You mentioned Iran, which I want to ask you about in a minute, but it's like one has to really hope that something major like that doesn't happen again. Imagine the Situation Room today. That really makes you want to run when you think about it that way. So you gave up the spy business, you gave up the FBI, you walked away from that part of your life. Why did you do that at the time you did it? You just had enough?
I think with the FBI, the sexual harassment had become so bad that I had become numb to it, which is interesting. And something really, really bad happened. And there was absolutely no way. The FBI at that point in time had no system in place to really report it or do anything about it. And I think it was at that point that I realized, like, I don't need to tolerate this anymore. And I want to be clear, not all FBI agents are like that. I've met some really, really wonderful ones, to be totally honest with you, who I wish I had worked with when I was there. I think it would have changed a lot of things. But I just realized that I think now is a good time to become a teacher, because I started to think, I used to think that things needed to change from the top down, but I actually don't think that that's true. I think they need to change from the bottom up. And I started realizing that if I go into the classroom, right, and start teaching students and exposing them to these jobs and these careers, maybe more of them, particularly even women, 17% of special agents at the FBI are women. Dude, it's 2025. That's really bad. That's really bad. Women couldn't even be special agents at the FBI until 1972. I was born in the 70s. Like, that's, I know some kids might think that's a long time ago, but it's really not, right? And only like 30% of national security as a whole is women. Again, I'm not saying that men are bad. My dad is probably why I pursued the careers I did. Like, he is incredible. My husband's super supportive. But I think the only way we're going to change some of these gender dynamics is getting more people into these fields and exposing them to those careers from the bottom up.
And that is important. But I just want to jump back to what I was saying before and get your thoughts on where we are today. There are so many conflicts in this world. There are so many examples of terrorism, both abroad and domestic. Do we have qualified people if the subject is Iran, if the subject is Israel and Hamas, if the subject is Russia and Ukraine, if the subject is a signal gate and our national security? Just no matter how partisan things were ever in Washington, it seems like the parties were always able to kind of agree on defense.
I agree.
And national security. And today it's all been so politicized and exploited and weaponized. And then when you layer on top of that, those in charge, like Pete Hegseth is no Leon Panetta. Kash Patel is no James Comey. Like it's astounding when you think it in those terms. So it makes me wonder, are we safe as Americans with this kind of leadership or lack thereof that exists in our most crucial agencies today?
So I hate to take like the cop-out answer, but yes and no. And let me explain why. So I worked in national security under two obviously very different administrations, Clinton and Bush. And I have to be honest with you, I disagreed with some things that happened, but I did feel that from a political standpoint, they didn't politicize at all. Like neither did. We successfully served under two different administrations, no problem. What I think the good news is right now is that hopefully the employees at the CIA, the ones that started when I did, they'd be there now 25 years, right? They'd be leaders within the agency or within some of these places. And my hope is that they are making policy recommendations because I know them and I trust them and I know that they have that brain power. There's no question that they have that brain power. So from that standpoint, I'm talking like the worker bee standpoint, right? I actually have faith in those organizations. Now, it's only going to work, right? If the people at the top listen to the recommendations. And listen, Bush definitely didn't listen to some of the things we told him to do. There's no question. We told him there were no WMDs, but they went in anyways, right? And so I think from that perspective, right, the people at the very top are what is problematic. And I'm very protective of the people that are still there because I think sometimes people are not, I'm sorry, can I say a bad word?
Sure.
People tend to shit on them. And like, I don't think that that's fair.
By the way, that's a bad word.
I don't know what I'm allowed.
You are a teacher.
I work for News Nation now. I'm not allowed to curse on air, so can't do that. But, people tend to shit on them, and I don't think that that's fair in any way, shape, or form. These are the brains behind policy. But the problem is the policy is driven mostly by the people at the top, right? In my opinion. And I've gone on my own, Instagram platform. I've been on News Nation. I have talked about what a problem, particularly Gabbard, is. And obviously, I focus more on her because of my background. Clearly, obviously, Hedge that got my wrath about kind of the females not being in combat situation. But Gabbard tends to get more of my wrath in terms of the choices that she's made, being friends with certain dictators, getting close to them. I don't think, again, she's served our country. I, appreciate her service. But at the same time, she actually doesn't have, this intelligence background of recruiting human assets and doing that delicate dance that I think that we need. And I'm not sure that she wants to have an understanding. She's in charge, in my opinion, of these agencies that she doesn't trust and doesn't agree with. And that is a huge problem. At least we may have had issues with whatever, some of the things Bush did, Clinton, whatever. But the reality is the people that were in charge of those agencies, which was actually Tenet at the time, we didn't have a DNI at that point in time. He at least believed in the agency. I don't think she trusts the agency, and I don't think she trusts the people there. And I think that is the problem. So I'm definitely scared for us.
And making things worse with the Gabbard situation is she doesn't have the trust of the president, the man who hired her. because he was asked about what she's been saying about Iran not being close to having nuclear weapons. And he said, I don't care what she said. Well, if you don't care what she said, she should not be in that job, right?
I mean, but the problem is if she's going to say Iran's not close to having nuclear weapons, I don't have words for that, Andy. I'm sorry, I'm stumped. I usually do, but that's just not reading, right? And I found mistakes that she has made before, and I've talked about that. And that's on just the most basic level. Listen, you could want to be friends with Iran, like, you go for it, girl. I'm not, but if that's what you want, fine. But you can't deny facts that they have had this program since the 90s. And so it's mind-boggling to me. And then you see the fights, right, that she's having. Well, really, the president's what instigated most of those, but they're very public, right? And so then I think other countries, in my opinion, it's less of a policy issue. People get mad at me for saying this, but it's more that other countries are observing these cracks in our systems. And that's when they will come in and attack us and exploit.
Sure. I mean,
that's my opinion.
Just think about it from a common sense standpoint. Like, who's running the shop here? And who's strategizing beyond making policy by fiat or by tweet or by emotion? I made a prediction that Gabbert's not going to last very long. Do you think I'm going to win that one? Yeah.
I don't think she's going to last very long. I mean, even if you look at just his past administration, he did go through individuals.
Yeah. My prediction, I've made this one many times, is that by January of 26, most of the people we're talking about and have been talking about won't be around because of what you just said.
I agree with you. I also think that even includes, and again, it's weird from a political standpoint. I just look at the people, right, that are in charge. And the head of the CIA right now, obviously he's not my favorite person in the world, but I actually think he's more capable than some people that have led. And so my concern is I don't necessarily want him to go right at this point, but I think he may be going soon as well. I think that everyone's going to leave.
Yeah, well, I think, him, Hegseth, Gabbard, Bobby Kennedy Jr., they're all problems for the most part. They're all problems for Trump. They don't really give him anything except distraction and having to answer for their wacko behavior. And, apparently with Iran, the reports are that Hegseth, Gabbard, they're not even at the table, really. They're not having a voice in this. And when you think about DNI and SecDef not really being involved in this kind of critical decision-making, military decision-making, how can they be long for the world? Especially when, like what you just said, he loves turnover. The man has made how much money saying, you're fired, right? That's what he gets up in the morning just jonesing to fire someone, and I always said, there's probably going to be nothing more exciting to Trump besides hiring a Kennedy than firing a Kennedy. So that, to me, is going to happen soon.
You're probably right.
Because that's the ultimate, that's like the Mitt Romney at the lunch table photo. Remember that? He is going to humiliate Bobby Kennedy, probably worse than anybody at some point soon. But
and they capitalize, nefarious actors capitalize on that. If you look at Clinton and Bush, both kept Tenet on, right, as the head of the CIA at that time. That's actually good because that shows our
continuity.
Hey, we are strong. I believe in this person. And so when you have this constant turnover.
But it's also so convoluted because you're mentioning presidents that are normal, qualified people. This is a president. The people who we are fearing will capitalize on this chaos are the very people he thinks of as his pals, our enemies. He wants the adulation, the respect of Xi Jinping, of Kim Jong-un, of Erdogan and Orban and Putin. So we're worried about those people, but he's not.
He's very disappointed in Putin recently because Putin didn't listen to him, about Ukraine.
Yeah, but it's not going to change. I'm giving him 2 weeks for a ceasefire, and then he's going to get hit with massive sanctions. And we're already at the 4 week.
I know.
And now he's going to make his decision about Iran in 2 weeks. Everything is 2 weeks. So let's get into this stuff because I want to ask you, because we're living in very turbulent, dangerous times, what is concerning you the most right now? And in a way, I'd like to do a little bit of a lightning round and get your thoughts on several very serious situations globally and here at home. So let's start with Iran. Where is this going?
I don't know. But what I think is happening, and I believe that this is a good thing for the Iranian people, is that I do think that this is the weakest that the Ayatollah has ever been. I think the economic situation in Iran is dire right now, the most dire it's ever been. And I think Israel, in my opinion, and I've said this before, I think that Israel knows exactly where the Ayatollah is and could probably take him out if that's what they wanted to do. But that is the bargaining chip that they are utilizing right now. And so I think that there has never been a better time for this regime to fall, in my opinion. But do I think that the U.S. is going to get involved? The U.S. is going to get involved. It will, and I did a video on my Instagram about this, in the form of bunker busters, right? Like, that's how we're going to get involved, because no one can reach Fordow, which is where their nukes are. If we do that, we have then involved ourselves, right? Like, there's no question that that's what we've done. I think what Trump is doing right now is waiting to see how this bombing campaign plays out. In my opinion, he's just kicking the can. Like, Israel's going to keep going. Like, there's no question. Israel, they've already started it. They're going to keep going. So I think someone's going to call his bluff in 2 weeks, and he's going to have to give the bunker busters to Iran. Therefore, we now are involved. So I don't see this changing in 2 weeks, but I could absolutely be wrong. I've definitely been wrong before, but I think that there has probably never been a better or riper time for the regime to change in Iran.
Mm-hmm. Well, what you just said is interesting, because there's lots of people who are like, oh, regime change, that's never worked for us. Let's stay away from that.
Like, also the person who said, a couple weeks ago, when he was like, I'm engaging in discussions with Iran, I came out and on News Nation, on, my Instagram, and said, this is literally the dumbest idea ever. Why would you engage in direct talks with Iran? They don't care. Like, no, this isn't going to work. And I mean, shocking. I was right. Like, that's, I think that he is naive. And a lot of his policy recently has shown me that he actually is that naive, right? Like, he was mad at Putin for doing something without asking him. And then he's mad now at Iran for not, in good faith, engaging in these talks. What that is telling me is that he really is that naive.
Right. But what has he done to show us that I'm mad and now here's what I'm going to do about it? It's that other taco point. Like, do you believe he's a taco or not? Like, that's what he seems to do all the time. He chickens out.
I like tacos. So I don't.
I know. Why do we have to ruin good Mexican food? Now every time I eat a taco, I have to think of this lunatic.
He hasn't done anything, Andy. I don't say that he has, but what I'm saying is he engages in that rhetoric. Right. Right.
For sure.
I'm mad at you now, like a toddler. Right. And so that's what keeps happening. And there's this shock and awe. And so at first I thought maybe it was an act. Right. Because I never know. Mm-hmm. I don't think anyone ever knows. But now I realize, it's really not an act. Like, he's definitely that naive in terms of dealing with these dictators.
Well, he said he's going to end, and this is the next subject I want to ask you about, the Russia-Ukraine war. He's going to end that on day one. I mean, yeah, totally. Naive. I mean, it's not even naive. It is beyond comprehension how, A, he could have said that, and B, how half of the country were like, okay, sure. Yeah, we believe you. And now where are we? So what's going to happen with that conflict going forward?
That's a hard one. And I actually want to talk about it in Russia's point of view. I actually think no matter what happens, I do want Ukraine to be victorious. There's no question about that. But no matter what happens, Russia's lost. And
lost.
Let me explain. Yes. Mm-hmm. And can I explain why, though?
Sure, absolutely.
Even if they gain Ukraine, which I don't want to happen, but let's just say that they do. This has gone on for years. Right? Ukraine has launched successful drone strikes, not once, but twice, into Russia. Russia has shown that they are not the militarily strong country that the whole world thought that they were. Because when this conflict first happened, everyone said 7 to 10 days, this will be done. Ukraine will be wiped off the face of the map. It'll all be part of Russia. This will be done. That's not what's happened at all. And so I think Russia really had the wool pulled over a lot of the world's eyes, that they were this strong, capable nation that could take out all these other countries. And they are not. They are not that, full stop. That's what this war has shown. So in my opinion, no matter what, Russia has lost. Because this is what, year 3 of the conflict. And you were talking about a country, Ukraine, that militarily, just from what we had known before the war started, should have folded, quite frankly, under Russia should not have been that easily penetrated, by drone operations and those kinds of things. But they have been very capable, if not more so, every step of the way. And Russia has really put on this good, what I like to call psyop show about just how spectacular and strong they are. And they aren't. Like, full stop. They can never recover from that. And they can never put that back into the box. So either way, Russia's lost. Now, would I like to see Ukraine emerge victorious? I would. I think, and maybe this is because he and I are the same age, same birth year. I feel, we're both Jewish, but I feel that Zelensky is a leader that I'd like to see be more the future of the world and more the future of leader. I know, again, some people really disagree with me because they hate Zelensky. Fine. But I think, is he perfect? No, absolutely not. No leader is perfect. But what he has done for his country is what, in my opinion, every leader needs.
Sure. I mean, I can't imagine how anyone hates Zelensky. I know that there are people.
You would be shocked at the comments that I get, like, on the regular from people. So
from the MAGA crowd?
It depends. Like, it really depends on the day.
Yeah, because that makes sense to me. I get that, but I can't. Anybody with a quarter brain, I can't imagine. It's not even a conversation. But you're Jewish. I'm Jewish. Talk to me about Israel, Gaza, where this mess goes. I have mixed feelings on a lot of stuff. I've been very pro-Israel. I do think that this is a conflict that is ages old on some foundational level, and it's just complicated, and a lot of people try to simplify it, oversimplify it. But what's going to happen there? Best case scenario.
I mean, there's no question that Israel will be still Israel. Like, again, like, Palestine, they don't have the infrastructure, right, to be able to take that over. But I think it's more than that, in my opinion. I've never been more probably disappointed in the world than I have with this conflict. And it is, I'm Jewish. That's most of the hate mail that I get.
I can imagine. Jewish. It may come as a shock to you. We may break some news here, but the world hates Jews.
That's the part that has upset me. That part right there. And it was interesting because I think it was Van Jones, who I actually really like. I like to listen to him. And he was talking about this conflict. And what he said was, listen, obviously I do support Ukraine, right? Like, I've supported Ukraine from the beginning. But what we never saw here in the U.S. was these protests, killing of people who are Russian, right? Simply because they agree with that country. But we are seeing that with this conflict. And so for me, it's hard to take the other side seriously when this is what is going on. And that's the problem, because I have to wonder, is this rooted in the fact that you deeply care about Palestinians and their future and their plight? Because I do. I absolutely do. And I do not like Netanyahu. I have said that I do not like Netanyahu. I don't support some of the things that he is doing. I do support Israel's right to exist, though. And so I think the problem is this coming from you deeply caring about the plight of Gazans and Palestinians, or is this because you hate Jews? And this is because most people hate Jews.
God, you sound like me. I feel like I'm listening to myself with long blonde hair.
That is the problem.
No, it is the problem. And after October 7th and for the first year after that, it was so hard. I mean, I agree with you. To me, whether a baby dies and they're Jewish or Palestinian, it's all the same to me.
It's wrong.
Okay, it is all wrong. And we have to somehow end that. But what I don't do is oversimplify things. These situations are highly complicated, highly nuanced, centuries old. But when I saw people ripping down hostage posters, that's when I really started to think, like, this isn't about Palestinians. This is about hating Jews, because you had so many people saying, what's happening in Gaza is wrong because the people in Gaza, they're not part of the government. They're not part of Hamas. They're not part of the army. They didn't ask for war. And then I'd say, well, but neither did those people, those babies, those children on those hostage posters. But you're ripping them off like you hate these people, like you hate these children. They didn't ask for any of this. Why are you ripping the posters off? This isn't about Palestinians. This is about hating Jews. Because now if you look at the last couple of years and you realize, all the atrocities happening all over the world, the Uyghurs in China, the civil war in Yemen, the Darfur, Africa, the humanitarian crisis. Where are the protests over that? Where's the outcry over that? And we actually have a president right now who says, I want to take over Gaza, kick out 2 million people, and put up a resort. Not a peep.
I disagree with
Not
that.
a peep for the pro-Palestinian college crowd. Where are the college protests over that? You actually have a colonizer saying, I'm a colonizer.
I agree with you. I couldn't disagree with a policy more. I disagree with that. And I'm Jewish, like, for heaven's sake. Again, I disagree with that.
Yeah.
But this is not, when I look at people who are pro-Ukraine or pro-Russia, and like, no, you don't see, and Van Jones was right, you don't see people being gunned down over that.
Right.
You don't see any of that. And that is the problem. They hate Jews more than they love Palestinians and Gazans.
Well,
that's
1,200
what
Jews were slaughtered in the worst massacre since the Holocaust. And I think we had one 24-hour period of sympathy. And then the hate.
I don't even think we did.
Yeah, it probably didn't even go 20. I'm being generous. I'm being kind.
You're being kind
to the Jew haters. But then it just went into deep. Oh, you know what? I forgot. We hate Jews. Even if they got killed and burned alive.
And that's what I ultimately feel badly for, because the thing is if you want to help Palestinians and you want to help Gazans, which, they have a right to exist and not be killed. I think you and I both can agree on that. This is not helping them.
No.
Because it's disingenuous. What you're doing is disingenuous because you don't care. You just hate Jews.
Yeah.
And that's the problem.
Yep. And the last one in this little lightning round is anti-Semitism, domestic terrorism, white nationalism, which in many ways I think is even a greater threat, especially when you have somebody in the White House who's incited a deadly insurrection. That's a greater threat than perhaps anything global to us right now. What do we do about that?
I think that's the problem right now is obviously I look at 1-6, right? And I mean, I was horrified. I've spoken out against that. I've called them domestic terrorists, but I also have called, the individuals who just shot the 2 Jews who I know was kind of left-leaning. I've called him a domestic terrorist. To me, it's not about politics. Like, if you engage in this behavior, you are a domestic terrorist. People that were destroying Teslas, like, you're a domestic. Part of the problem in this country, and I hate to get like technical and I won't, but we don't have a domestic terrorism charging statute. We don't. You cannot charge someone federally with domestic terrorism.
Interesting.
That is so bad. So we're just basically saying that foreign people are terrorists. And that in itself...
foreign brown people.
Yes, and that in and of itself increases racial profiling and is hugely problematic. So I think we need to think about having a domestic terrorism charging statute. And it actually has been somewhat bipartisan. The person who's killed it every time has been actually AOC. She's killed it every time. Schumer put it forward. So you kind of had a bipartisan situation going on, which was nice, but it keeps getting killed, which is a bummer. I think we need to call it what it is. It's not patriotism. It's terrorism, like full stop. And until we start doing that, people are going to think that they're patriots, right? And that they're doing the right thing. Because in my opinion, words and labels actually do matter. But I think also we don't do the best. No, we have stopped some attacks. The FBI has. But lone wolf attacks are hugely problematic because at least with Al-Qaeda or ISIS even, they leave a trail, right? They leave some kind of trail. The trail may take a while, fine, but they leave a trail. These lone wolf folks, they're radicalized either here in the U.S. or outside, and then we can't find them because they're leaving no trail. And that becomes hugely problematic.
Well, that gets back to what you were saying before, that hopefully there are good, decent, committed, patriotic, career FBI and CIA personnel and elsewhere in the government that somehow, despite what's happening at the top, are still going to be able to do these incredibly important jobs that helps us stay safe here and abroad, especially our military personnel who should never be politicized, who should never be exploited. That's a big concern going forward right now because we see what Trump is doing with the military. It's his army, it's his Marines, and he's hanging them out there like, you mess with me, my military is going to come get you, so you better be quiet, you better not oppose me. And we don't have a Mattis, we don't have a Kelly, we don't have Mark Milley. We don't have those guys anymore. I just hope there's other people, like you were saying before, that are still in the military who hold high commanding positions who are going to be the check on this president's worst instincts.
I hope so too, but I know that he's fired a lot of them.
He sure did.
Recently.
Yeah. Tracy, we could talk for hours. You'll have to come back again and finish the conversation. So much to talk about. I mean, it's dizzying. It's exhausting. I just want to get back to when politics was boring and we have anything to talk about. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks so much for having me, Andy. It was a real pleasure.
All righty. Take care. This episode of The Back Room was edited and produced by me, Andy Ostroy. It was co-edited and co-produced by Maddie Rosenberg and co-produced by Jen Hammoud. Our theme song was composed by Andrew Hollander, and our logo was designed by Cricket Langell. And special thanks to Patricia Wind. Please take a moment to rate and review the podcast, and also follow or subscribe. Until next time, keep your eyes on Washington, Hollywood, and your own backyards, and have a great week.